Okay, I'm going to just take you through this whole goal and assessment critique process. The first thing we look at are the goals. And the goals are just considered at first how they relate to the content that's supposed to be covered. We're not looking at the assessment at all at this point. I am just looking at these goals and whether or not they reflect the actual content. The first step I'm going to do is identify what level each goal is at. Students will identify major figures, Cortez, Esteban, de Soto, Coronado, de las Casas. The term identify, I can do that just at a level 1 or recall level. So I will call that goal a level 1. Students will be able to label the following on a map. Labeling is memorization. That is also level 1. Students will define the following terms. Again, defining, although I could make that a level 2 or even a level 3, at the minimum, and that's what I always have to focus on, I can consider this to be just writing down the definition I memorized from the book. So that is level 1. Question or goal 4, students will be able to identify modern instances of the following terms: plantation, encomienda, mission, and conquistador. Again, now I'm using identify here just like I am in 1, but the identifying modern instances suggests to me that they're going beyond what is just in the text and they need to have some other kind of outside knowledge. So that does not make it a level 1, it makes it more of a level 2. Could be a level 3, but at minimum it has to be a level 2, so that's the goal that I'm going to put here. The final one, students will evaluate, and evaluate's the key term here, the fairness of Spanish society according to classroom rules for personal rights and responsibilities is a level 3. Evaluation is part of the evaluation, analysis, and synthesis set that we've called level 3. So this is a level 3 goal. You have to do it going beyond what's in the text, and it goes beyond mere understanding and application. So that is the first step. I have what goals, at what level each goal is at. Now I have to consider whether or not each one reflects the content of the chapter. Now this is supposed to be for lesson 3. And when I look at these names, I have Cortez, who is not in there. And when I'm considering this goal critique, goal number 1, Cortez is extra. He was in lesson 2. He shouldn't really be in lesson 3. They should have covered that, last week or whatever. De Soto, Coronado, de las Casas are all in there, but they are missing de Vacha and de Leon. So those should be included here, or could be included in here. Now, in the real world, you may have reasons for not including them, but as far as you doing these critiques, I want you to at least notify me that you are aware that there is some level of mismatch. So that's goal number 1. And the goal, the easiest way to do this is to go goal by goal and say whether or not there are any issues. So goal number 2, when I'm looking at this, Hispaniola, the Mississippi, the American Southwest, Tenochtitlan. Tenochtitlan was from lesson 2 as well. So that's not in the content. And some omissions that they have, the American Southwest is somewhat vague if you look at your lesson 3 materials. Excuse me. There were explorers mentioned above here that explored that area, just like De Soto explored the Mississippi. Other areas that weren't in there are De Leon went all over Florida and Georgia and things like that. And Cuba could have been included as well. So there are some issues here. Again, these goals may be totally fine. You may have good reasons for not including them, but I want you to at least notify me that there is a mismatch. Goal 3, those are all the terms. Nothing really wrong with that. Goal number 4, identifying modern instances of the following terms: plantation, encomienda, mission, and conquistador. Conquistador is not in the content. That was in lesson 2. And then some of the terms are actually left out, and they're represented here. So you may have reasons again for not including them in the second goal. But I would like you to at least say that they're not in there. So we're going to add that to this. Some terms not represented, and they are missionary and society. Goal number 5, nothing really wrong with that. Students will evaluate the fairness of Spanish society according to classroom rules. Sounds like actually a good activity, and you want to connect how different societies have different structures, and sometimes they're good and sometimes they're not so good, but you have to have some basis on which to make those judgments. So there's really nothing wrong with that goal. Now, general levels, what you'll be looking for here is whether or not any major areas were left out. Like if I didn't mention Hispaniola or slavery in here, and slavery is not in here, but I do mention Hispaniola, so it's kind of indirectly represented. If I didn't talk about Spanish society at all, that's a big part of that lesson. I'd want to know whether or not things were left out. I also want to make sure that I have a good mix of different levels of cognition represented. I don't want everything to be all level 1, because then I'm just having my students memorize things, and I really want to go beyond that. But I don't also want to have things all level 2 and 3. Level 1 are okay, because as you read in that How Knowledge Helps article, you need to have the facts in order to have anything to think about. So level 1s are good. This is a pretty good mix. I have 3 level 1 goals about the basic facts, and then I have another goal where I want them to make connections to the modern world, and this one also connections to not only the modern world, but any instance of some kind of structured society. So that is the first part of this whole process, the goal critique. So you'll be identifying the goals, seeing whether or not things are left out, then talking about whether omissions occurred, and evaluating whether or not there's a good mix of different levels of cognition. The next video will talk about the assessment critique.